The Obamas decided it was time to pull Donald Trump down a peg or two. I mean, this guy has been pretending he won the last election now for nearly 4 years. Donald Trump did not win the last election. He is obsessed with crowd size. I mentioned at the start that I was in Wilkes-Barre at a Trump rally on Saturday. That stadium was not full. Donald Trump put out a tweet on Truth Social, whatever you want to call it, saying that there were 11,500 people left waiting to get in.
Right.
I was one of the last people in. And I can tell you, there was nobody outside waiting to get in. Everybody got in, and there were still empty seats. It was a big crowd, no doubt about it. A lot of people still love to hear Donald Trump. He can generate a lot of enthusiasm, but the lying about crowd size is just ridiculous, especially when you know he exaggerates, but when you see it with your own eyes, as I did last weekend, it really sticks in the craw.
Talk a little bit about what's to come tonight, because in the next couple of hours, we're going to hear from Tim Walz. We're also going to hear from Nancy Pelosi, Bill Clinton as well. We also heard yesterday from Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. I'm going to play some clips, I think, in a moment of what happened last night. In fact, can we do that now? Let's play the clips of Michelle and Barack Obama from earlier on yesterday. It was earlier on today, wasn't it? Technically for us, two titans of American politics, two huge names globally, both of them massive figures. We'll start with the former First Lady, Michelle Obama, who gave a well-received 20-minute speech in which she delivered several takedowns of Donald Trump, including this one.
I want to know, who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs?
In reference to, what is that in reference to? Just explain the context of that, Sarah.
Okay, well, that was one of my favorite lines of the night. It was a tremendous put down to Donald Trump, because Donald Trump, when he ramps up his anti-immigration rhetoric, he's been trying at the same time to win black voters to his side. And he said, they're coming and taking your jobs. Immigrants are taking black jobs. And it's like, hang on a minute, what are black jobs? It kind of is a racist remark. I mean, I don't even want to start explaining what that means. I think your listeners can pretty well guess that it's very condescending about the nature of black jobs. And prior to Michelle Obama's speech, I also absolutely loved a tweet by Simone Biles, the champion, the greatest of all time gymnast who just won a clutch of Olympic medals in Paris. And she tweeted, "I love my black job."
Right.
So
yeah.
we just heard the former First Lady say a black job could be the presidency. And we know from Simone Biles, it also means being the greatest gymnast in the world. So let's not put down black jobs. They're terrific.
Yeah, okay, interesting. Let's hear it again from Barack Obama then, who delivered one of his most energized speeches in years. It was quite interesting, wasn't it, seeing him doing his thing again, really. He's stepping back into the spotlight. Former president also took aim at Donald Trump and his successor's obsession with crowd sizes.
Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down his golden escalator 9 years ago. It has been a constant stream of gripes and grievances that's actually been getting worse now that he's afraid of losing to Kamala. There's the childish nicknames, the crazy conspiracy theories, this weird obsession with crowd sizes.
So the thing that really stood out to me, Sarah, was how reminiscent that was. I mean, he has mocked Donald Trump since this moment, but it was a bit reminiscent of the 2011 White House Correspondents' Dinner, where Barack Obama, as the president does at that dinner, gave a speech full of gags. It's about jokes, that dinner, that speech. And Donald Trump was in the crowd that evening, wasn't he? And Barack Obama roasted him, really. And some people suggest...
That's the word, roasted him, yeah.
Some people suggest, and I think this is probably not quite right, because Donald Trump had flirted with running for president quite a few times over the last few decades, hadn't he? But some people suggest that was an origin story moment, the moment that Donald Trump decided, do you know what, screw you, I'm going to go for that job, and I'm going to win. And I have this thing about relentlessly mocking people, and maybe there's nothing wrong with mocking people. Everything and everybody should be should be open to being mocked. But I just wonder if mockery is the right way to change hearts and minds.
Well, you make a good point, and definitely it is part of Trump's origin story that he was so annoyed by being teased by Barack Obama at the White House Correspondents' Dinner that he ran for president. But actually, I think Obama's on his home turf here. The crowd really enjoyed it. You heard a lot of laughter when he referred to crowd size. I'm a huge fan of radio, but I have to tell you that in a way, you need the moving image to go with this, because he basically opened and closed his hands like an accordion, and he shrunk them when he talked about crowd size. And I think people saw a bit of a ribald joke in that as well. Right. So, really Donald Trump is a sort of teensy-weensy person. But honestly, Donald Trump has made a whole career out of mocking other people, and it's worked very well for him. Michelle Obama was famously known for saying, when they go low, we go high. But actually, I think the Obamas decided it was time to pull Donald Trump down a peg or two. I mean, this guy has been pretending he won the last election now for nearly 4 years. Donald Trump did not win the last election. He is obsessed with crowd size. I mentioned at the start that I was in Wilkes-Barre at a Trump rally on Saturday. That stadium was not full. Donald Trump put out a tweet on Truth Social, whatever you want to call it, saying that there were 11,500 people left waiting to get in.
Right.
I was one of the last people in. And I can tell you, there was nobody outside waiting to get in. Everybody got in, and there were still empty seats. It was a big crowd, no doubt about it. A lot of people still love to hear Donald Trump. He can generate a lot of enthusiasm, but the lying about crowd size is just ridiculous, especially when you know he exaggerates, but when you see it with your own eyes, as I did last weekend, it really sticks in the craw. And so, yeah, fair play to the Obamas if they want to mock Donald Trump. Go for it, I say.
That's very interesting. Let's just listen in to the Democratic National Convention. It's happening right now in Chicago. Most of the speech is happening much, much later in the depths of the night. But we can just listen in to what is clearly a bit of a party atmosphere, actually, at the DNC. I think, is that a bit of Bill Withers? It's not actual Bill Withers, is it? Is Bill Withers there? No.
I don't think Bill Withers is with us, Darryl.
Bill Withers is dead. Of course he is. Oh, no. Oh, no. That's the most Alan Partridge moment of my life, I think Alan Partridge, there's a literal gag in Alan Partridge, isn't there, where he says something about Bill Withers, who thankfully is still with us. And of course now he isn't. And that isn't even Bill Withers singing. Okay, let's move very swiftly on from that. And we'll consider some of those there tonight, including Nancy Pelosi, former Speaker of the House. She is credited with making the decisive moves to persuade Joe Biden to stand aside. She's probably the reason why we're having this convention in the way that we're having it in the first place. Well, earlier in the show, we considered the legacy and influence of her and another important grandee, Bill Clinton, who's also speaking tonight. I spoke to Elaine Povich, who is a Washington correspondent and a biographer of Nancy Pelosi. I asked Elaine how influential Pelosi had been on Kamala Harris being the nominee.
There is one thing I learned about Nancy Pelosi in my years of covering her and doing the book, is that she is probably the best vote counter I have ever seen. She knows where the votes are. She knows where they're coming from. When she ran for majority whip, the number 3 position in the House way back almost a quarter century ago, she knew down to almost the very last vote where they were. everybody was predicting her opponent would win, and she won by the exact amount that she predicted. So what she saw now in the House of Representatives is that with Joe Biden at the top of the ticket, it was very unlikely that the Democrats would take over the House again, despite a lot of the political wind blowing in their direction. And she felt that her precious House was in danger of continuing to be controlled by the Republicans. And she felt that the President, Joe Biden, was a drag on the ticket. And she wasn't about to let that happen, not on her watch.
That is Elaine. Excuse me, the name. Oh, it's Povich. Excuse me, Elaine Povich, who's a Washington correspondent and a biographer of Nancy Pelosi. On who somebody who is, Sarah, arguably one of the most powerful women in America.
Yes, I mean the only person who's been more powerful than her is Kamala Harris as vice president of the United States, but arguably Nancy Pelosi wielded more brute power while she was speaker, and she was speaker under Obama and again under Biden, and she knows how to count. You've got to know how to do the math, as the Americans say. And sometimes
what does that actually mean? What does that actually mean, Sarah? Are you talking there about votes in the Senate or counting votes during elections?
Counting votes in the House of Representatives. There are a lot of people, and with different factions. So you've got, the progressives, you've got people on the left like AOC, you've got people on the right to sort of, shuffle. And then so you have to know how to compromise, how to get the maximum turnout, how to have a united party within the House of Representatives. I have to say, people thought that she was tremendous. She's been succeeded by Hakeem Jeffries, who is also running a pretty tight ship because the Republicans currently have a majority in the House, but only a small one. And he's managed to sort of keep that unity going that she really forged. Nancy Pelosi is often portrayed as a wealthy California liberal, which she is. However, she's also the daughter of the mayor of Baltimore, and she kind of grew up in the school of hard knocks of politics. She saw it all from her cradle onwards. So she's now in her 80s. She definitely hasn't lost her marbles, but she is no longer. She did finally retire as speaker, and she's practiced all the dark arts with a considerable amount of grace. I once had the misfortune, I thought I was doing well. I'd kind of moseyed into position at a garden party at the British Embassy in Washington when the Queen had come to celebrate her Jubilee quite a while ago. And I thought, I'm in a good position here. But of course, I totally blew my moment with the Queen because Nancy Pelosi elbowed me out of the way, and naturally the Queen, guided by senior British embassy officials at her elbow, spent quite a bit of time on Nancy Pelosi and absolutely no time on me, quite rightly.
Well, to be honest, her loss, Sarah, her loss.
Thank you, Darryl.
Listen, let's speak to Morgan Harper, who is a Democratic strategist. She's a former Senate candidate for the Democrats in Ohio. She's also a delegate at the convention this week for the state of Ohio. Morgan, hello, good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, really well, thank you. How is it for you? We just got a bit of a flavour there. We just had a little bit of not Bill Withers performing at the convention. How has it been for you this week?
Oh, it's been really exciting. I mean, it's hard to even describe how much enthusiasm there is from all different types of Democrats all over the country, ages, racial, religious backgrounds, just coming together for this Harris-Walz ticket. This is the first convention I've ever been to, but just having been involved in politics for a few years now, we haven't always had this unity as a party, but it seems like everyone's really focused on coming together to win in November.
Right, that's really key, isn't it? Do you then presumably, Morgan, feel a sense of relief that it isn't Joe Biden up there?
Well, I'm on a lot of mixed emotions there. I think Joe Biden has done a great job, and especially on a lot of the economic policies that I personally focus on, and his competition agenda, trying to check some of the concentration we've seen in different market areas, really try to lower prices and increase the ability of small businesses to grow. He has a great track record. But it did seem like there was a lot of concern about his ability to make it through what's, certain and always to be a really grueling campaign cycle here in the U.S. So luckily, this one seems like it's going to be a little shorter for Harris-Waltz, and then going on to govern. So look, I mean, I think especially in her speech last Friday, Vice President Harris made it really clear that she plans to continue the agenda that Biden-Harris administration started on that economic front. And she also, has the vigor we've seen to make it across the country and all these swing states to turn out the votes to win. So people are feeling good.
So were you surprised? Can I jump in here? Were you surprised by how much joy appeared to be unleashed under Kamala Harris? I mean, nobody was really talking her up while trying to push Biden out. People were talking about maybe having an open convention, but she just suddenly, seized the reins, emerged as the favorite. I mean, Bill Clinton's talking later. He endorsed her pretty promptly. And then it just felt like this wave of relief and enthusiasm came, was suddenly, there. Were you surprised by that?
A little, but I think what we often see is this disconnect between the political class of Washington, D.C. and the pundits and the experts and the people who get paid to, quote unquote, do politics, and real people in the United States. And a lot of times those views from pundits and the political class can guide some of the candidate decisions and campaign strategy decisions that are made. But in this case, I think Joe Biden did something that was absolutely crucial to get us to this point today. He not only stepped aside, but like you said, he immediately endorsed Kamala Harris, and others that are influential in the party, like the Clintons, came behind her as well. And I think if that hadn't happened, even the same day, then we might have seen more of a push to try to get to that open convention, have multiple people vying for the seat and the nomination, I should say. And that, in my view, would have been a disaster. And so we should be grateful again to Joe Biden for not only doing what's right in terms of making room for a different candidate, but also making the really good decision that Kamala Harris is the one to continue the legacy from his administration and to get this thing done in November.
Okay. Bill Clinton is speaking tonight, Morgan, somebody who is a sort of complicated character. He comes with quite a bit of baggage, bit of debate about whether he's a help or a hindrance. He's been in the shadows for the last couple of years. Are you pleased to see him there centre stage tonight?
I mean, I wasn't, though a delegate, I was not at all involved in planning the convention. So hard to know exactly what everyone was thinking and deciding who would speak or not. But it does seem, just observing and working through the program this week, that there's been this effort to show the history of the most recent Democratic Party and its leaders, and kind of that this ticket is a continuation of a legacy from those past Democratic administrations. And, regardless of some of the undoubted complications in Bill Clinton's legacy, he is looked back by many Democrats fondly as a strong president who was able to be reelected. And that's something that we hope to do again right now with Biden, with the Harris-Waltz ticket.
Old habits die hard there, Morgan, I think.
I had a bit of a wicked thought on that, really, that actually all these bigwigs were wheeled in because they thought that Kamala Harris needed shoring up, but she seems to be doing pretty well on her own. Maybe they didn't need Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
They probably thought they did. Yeah.
Do you think, just on Bill Clinton, do you think, Morgan, that he is a more of a help than a hindrance broadly?
It's really hard to say. I mean, and this again is where we see the Democratic tent is quite broad. There are a lot of different perspectives in it. I know for a lot of folks my age that, in our early 40s, that I don't know a lot of people that look to Bill Clinton as some kind of legend in the party or steward of the ideas and vision for the future. But this is a party that does have, and we see it here at the convention, that's a lot of folks who are telling me, that 1992 was the first convention they ever attended. It was really memorable. That was the time when Bill Clinton was the new guy on the block, and that they look back on that time fondly. And so regardless of what came after, and again, some of the complications that no one can dispute, I do think that there's been this effort to try to bring everyone in to make them feel like this is part of the Democratic legacy, that they are part of this party, and that we are all in this together, looking to head towards November.
Okay, I mean, it's a big moment, this, Morgan. There's a lot of momentum. We have talked for the last couple of weeks about this election being Donald Trump's to lose. Polls have narrowed, certainly, but he has his nose ahead still in a couple of key states. Although, as does Kamala Harris, it's certainly opened up. there's a temptation, Morgan, is there not, to get to an end of a week like this and think, well, it's sewn up for the Democrats, it's sewn up for Kamala Harris. The truth is that's not the case, is it?
Not at all. I mean, that would be a huge mistake for anyone to think that somehow the enthusiasm, being able even to have two simultaneous rallies in two important states, that's a sign that this is in the bag. It is not. And I think that's where, Michelle Obama's remarks, the former First Lady's remarks, were so important yesterday, that there's a lot of work to do. And this isn't really the time for navel gazing. This is the time to find the thing that you can do and get it done as quickly as you can and do as much of it as possible. And so you're right. I mean, this is all going to come down these swing states, very narrow margins, most likely. And so the enthusiasm of the convention is, these are the true believers. We're already there, but we need to make sure that we get people that are a little bit more on the fence, or those that might not be so willing to turn out to vote.
Okay, Morgan.
Yeah, your own state. Yeah, sorry, I was just suddenly fascinated to have someone from Ohio, because your own state used to be considered the swing state, and I mean, I was there when George W. Bush won it long ago, but that was considered, very good for him because, it was in the balance. And then everybody was shocked by the scale of Donald Trump's victory there later. Is it now just clearly a red Republican state? Any hope of getting it back?
I think there is hope. And again, that, the shock was for the political class. I don't think people in Ohio were all that shocked, in the sense that we've had a lot of communities across Ohio that have been decimated by 40 years of economic policy that has pretty much sold our communities away for parts. And there's been no strategy. And Democrats have said again and again that they are going to do something about it. And it hasn't happened. And I do think that first election of Donald Trump was a frustration of that. Re-electing him, maybe another story. But it's been a mixed bag, especially over the last couple of years. We passed an abortion ballot initiative that secured the right to reproductive freedom in Ohio just last year. Sherrod Brown, who's one of our U.S. senators, is up for re-election and up in current polling by 4 points. And so I think we'll get back to being a swing state, but it is going to require being responsive to the real people on the ground that are telling Democrats what they want to see. And that is economic opportunity everywhere across the state, regardless of if you're in a big city or a small town. And we need to be responsive to that. Okay.
Donald Trump has a 52% lead. Not 52% lead, goodness me, 10-point lead, according to 538, the polling company at the moment, in Ohio.
I would be very surprised if we are able to win Ohio for the presidency. Yeah. But anything's possible. But just even if the margins come down a bit, that can be helpful to Sherrod Brown's race and then lay the groundwork for the future. And
potentially for you, Morgan, you ran for Senate before. Are you
Yes.
You going to do that again?
We'll have to see. But what I know for sure is that J.D. Vance is a clown, and he deserves to be nowhere near the White House. And so we gotta beat them. And I think the Harris-Walz ticket can get it done.
And so you ran against J.D. Vance?
He was in the Republican primary. I was in the Democratic primary.
In the primary, yeah, fine. Okay, Morgan, lovely to have your company tonight. Appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time. Morgan Harper, who is a Democrat strategist, also former Senate candidate for the Democrats in Ohio, who's at that convention. Just finally, just a few minutes left, Sarah, before the news. Just reflect on that. I mean, is there a possibility here that the Democrats come away from this week thinking that it's sewn up, and that actually momentum becomes complacency in this election?
Yeah, they've got to watch out. Kamala Harris keeps saying we're the underdogs, and I'm not sure that the people cheering her from the rafters are listening. They think they've got the big mo, and truthfully, she's done incredibly well. Joe Biden was about 3 or 4 points behind Donald Trump in the polls. Kamala Harris has now got, on average, about 2 points ahead of Donald Trump. But what should concern all Democrats is that when you look at the key swing states that she absolutely has to win, Pennsylvania, Georgia. Pennsylvania is neck and neck. Georgia, it looks like Donald Trump is ahead, frankly. And in some polls, he's quite convincingly ahead in Pennsylvania as well by a couple of points or more. So this is, I was just very struck listening to Hillary Clinton on Monday night. She won the popular vote by 3 million votes. She lost the Electoral College in what was practically a landslide. Because Donald Trump picked up all the Midwestern sort of swing states and some others as well that were unexpected. So this is the same thing could happen to Kamala Harris. On this surge of enthusiasm, she could really gin up turnout, win California in a landslide. It's not going to help her.
Okay, yeah. All right, really interesting. Listen, we'll move on and talk about some other bits and bobs. We've got our eye on the DNC. The problem is, Sarah, it's so late, isn't it? It's so frustratingly late. Like nothing starts until about 2:00 in the morning over there.
No, it's really bad luck. This should have been your moment, Darryl,
It
late
should.
night presenting. And but I'm actually shocked by how late they put it on. I know America's a big country, so 11 o'clock in California, on the East Coast is pretty early in California, but they're saving their main speakers for far too late, and it's in order to squeeze in a lot of jobsworths, frankly, who want their moment in the sun. Nobody's out there listening to them. They're all having fun outside and going to, it's like the party conference, you go in Britain, where you go to other events on the fringe or whatever. So, and all these grandees want to be able to say, oh, I spoke for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, etc. They're all overrunning. Certainly on the first day, it was a disaster. Once you give these politicians the microphone, they take advantage of it. And pushing all the stars well past people's bedtime. And by the way, Americans go to bed much earlier than Britons. I mean, I had to stop bringing people up at 9 o'clock in the evening because I'd find they were already in bed.
Yeah. And actually, it's interesting that because yes, their late speeches get an earlier audience in California, but they don't need to be speaking to California. They need to be speaking to Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Georgia, where it's getting late, where it's very late over there by then.
Yeah, I mean, Pennsylvania, a state that Kamala Harris really needs to win. Joe Biden's always talking about his Scranton roots and how he's sort of the ordinary Joe from Pennsylvania. He grew up there, at least very early in his life. He later moved to Delaware, but that was another thing. He didn't address, he didn't start speaking on the East Coast until 11:30 p.m. at night. How many Pennsylvanians were listening to that?
Yeah, and I guess you catch it in the morning news, all that sort of stuff. But no, you're right. It's far from prime time, is it? Okay, well, I mean, apart from the intricacies of their scheduling, it has been absolutely fascinating. By the way, we are fully committed to bringing you Kamala Harris tomorrow night. You're not going to miss that, by the way. James Hansen will be picking up from 1 o'clock. He will take you all through the night. So from 1 till 6, we will have full coverage of Kamala Harris's first big set-piece speech at a convention as officially the nominee for president for the Democrats. So we'll bring you that live on TimesRadio tomorrow night. You won't miss a beat